Alright, so another Captain America is out. Why they keep making these things, your guess is as good as mine. Probably because people like me keep watching them. Anyway, here's my review of the new Captain America movie, which I didn't even know the correct name of until I actually saw it in the theaters. Captain America: Brave New World. So the latest Captain America from Marvel Studios has just released worldwide, and what can I say? This is the fourth one that we're on to now, not even with Steve Rogers, and sometimes change is a good thing. In this instance though, God, it's so. I don't want to be that guy who says Sam Wilson isn't Captain America. Sam Wilson can be Captain America, and I'm sure that in the comics, there's storylines where Sam Wilson is a great Captain America, but man, oh man, does he not feel like Captain America in this movie at all. In fact, I would even go as far as to say this doesn't even feel like a movie. It feels like a TV show. It really strings away from, I think, the cinematic feel that we've had from the previous phases of Marvel movies in the past, and this is just very dull compared to the rest of those, quite frankly. Now, dull doesn't equal all bad. I'm just going to put it out here. I'm going to get into spoilers later in the video. I'll give you plenty of warning before I do. I'm not going to try to ruin anything without you knowing. I don't want to be that guy, so I'll give you plenty of warning to click off if you want to avoid spoilers. That said though, the best way I can describe Captain America: Brave New World is just bland. It's a meh story with meh characters, with meh tension, very little suspense, not too much going on in this film. In fact, for a movie which runs under 2 hours long, it drags quite a bit in the middle portion. Now, I don't want to be all negative Nancy over here. There are some things to like about this movie. I do think that they actually got a few elements of Sam Wilson's character quite spot on. I think they very quickly could have deviated and switched him into a Captain America that actually hates the government and hates being patriotic, but to their credit, they did stick to that storyline, which is a faithful representation of the character. I feel like that's definitely something that we could have seen them deviate from. He does actually honestly uphold most of the values that Steve Rogers did, which I've got to applaud the movie for. I feel like it would have been easy to deviate from that, and they stuck to it. I think from a writing perspective, this movie suffers dramatically in many senses of the word, in the fact that we just get exposition after exposition after exposition dump. And to be honest with you, the trailers didn't actually make a very clear picture of what this film was even about. And going into it, I didn't really even know what the plot was, so I'll try to keep it vague. But even from my vague description, you might think that we've seen it before, and that's because you have. Something goes wrong in the government, Captain America and his new sidekick team up, find some information and try to uncover the conspiracy as to what's going on. And if you think you've seen it before, it's because you have. I think a lack of originality is something that we've touched on multiple times with the Marvel films coming up to this one, and unfortunately this film does absolutely nothing to break that trend. Every story beat, the characters even, the nostalgia aspect of the thing, you've seen it before one way or another, and the film doesn't do heaps to excite you or bring in what I would think would be new fans to the cinematic universe. I think the people watching this film are people who are watching it, like myself, for the sake of keeping up. Whether it's worth keeping up at this point, you know, your guess is as good as mine. However, at the end of the day, the people watching this film are the ones who have watched Endgame, the ones who watched the original Iron Man, and everything in between. So, I don't think that this film is going to do a good job at bringing new fans into this universe. It just doesn't have the story for it. It really doesn't have the emotional beats, and it definitely lacks a lot of the continuity things that we've come to expect from these films. There are one or two things in this film that do tie into the grander scheme of things that you can tell they're going to bring up at the later stage, and you already know where they're going. Nothing in this movie is going to surprise you, put it that way. You know where every story beat is going to go once they introduce said plot point. The movie, it's very predictable. I think it lacks originality, and I think that it's poorly paced. One of the big things this film actually had to do was introduce Captain America's new sidekick, right? Because Falcon was obviously the sidekick along with Bucky Barnes. So how does it do in actually bringing in the new sidekick into the film? Is he entertaining? Does he have good charisma? Is he funny? Unfortunately, he's pretty annoying, to be honest with you. I don't think you can fault the guy who's playing the character. I don't know his name. However, the character himself is pretty bland and is honestly kind of whiny and annoying. You know that guy in high school who thought he was really funny and thought he was cracking jokes and making everyone laugh, but everyone kind of talks behind his back and goes, that guy needs to shut up. That's this guy here. They tried to do something with him in the third act, but I'm like, we've seen this before. There's quite a few story points in here and beats where, you know, you've seen it before. That said though, I do think there's a couple elements in the film which are engaging. I think Lolita is, you know, an interesting character. However, he's severely underdeveloped in this movie, and to the point where he becomes not even a C tier villain. I think like a D tier villain. Honestly, I'd put the leader in the Malekith kind of category at this point. You know those villains who they kind of sit on the sideline and watch from afar. We're going, ha ha ha, look at everything that I've orchestrated kind of thing. He's one of those guys. So if you're expecting to see the leader, you know, throw down in this film, I'm just going to save you the disappointment right now. To their credit, though, they didn't make him look absolutely awful, and I've got to give them credit because it seems the more advanced we get with computer-generated imagery, the more likely this character's going to look like shit, to be honest. We've had some real shit scenes in the past, and to their credit, the leader doesn't look atrocious, so I gotta give them props there where props is due. The film also really wants you to be on board with Sam Wilson as the new Captain America. There's multiple times in this movie where the characters try to say things to get the audience to be like, yeah, that's my guy, but as soon as you realize what the movie's doing in regards to trying to kind of trick you through the character's dialogue into liking Sam Wilson, rather than actually liking him for the film and the character itself, once you pick up on that, it becomes very cringeworthy, and it's not something that makes me go, yeah, I love Sam Wilson. It's more like, oh, you need to tell me to like Sam Wilson. That said, though, I don't think Anthony Mackie's doing a really bad job in this film or anything. I know I'm being very negative about the film. Honestly, it's bland. It drags. There's a couple elements in here which are interesting, which I give it credit for. To wrap it up, I think that they could have done a lot worse. This movie is actually a little better than I thought it would be, to be honest. Look, it's disappointing, of course. Red Hulk and Harrison Ford in the film, underused as well. I think that we all saw the Red Hulk coming in regards to the screen time he was going to be allocated. I won't ruin how much screen time Red Hulk gets, but let's just say the marketing is misleading for a reason. Harrison Ford's fine, Anthony Mackie's fine. Neither of these characters are going to be characters which I resonate with, to be honest, and neither of them are going to be characters that I look forward to seeing again if we get the chance. However, I do think that the film could have ended up a lot worse than it did, even though it is a bland, mediocre mess. I'll honestly give the film a 5 out of 10. Once again, I'm giving it that rating because I think it could have been a lot worse, and it could have been a disaster like the TV show, in my opinion, to the controversy which I might hear online. However, I do think this film really needed a rewrite. You can definitely tell that there were reshoots put into place. There's scenes and story beats and characters who are in this film for 5 minutes. And that feels very episodic rather than a feature-length film. It definitely doesn't carry the cinematic feel which you've grown to know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think it really lacks emotion and character depth, which we've come to love from the previous characters that we've seen in these movies as well. And unfortunately, that's the best I can give this film because of that. I'll get into some light spoilers now. There's not a heap to spoil in this film, but if you haven't seen the movie yet, click away now because I'm going to discuss spoilers. I'll start with the obvious, and this film obviously borrows very heavily from previous MCU films like The Winter Soldier. We get that bit where they go and find the leader's lair. You know, they're looking and there's exposition scene. Leader rocks up and he's like, ha ha ha, it's me the whole time. Look what I've been doing in the background. Now you're uncovering this conspiracy now. The problem with this is not only have we seen it before, but it's an incredibly lazy way to write a villain. Coming out and writing the story in the sense that, you know, there's a big exposition dump, the villain is revealed, villain's in the background, not actually in the forefront of the picture, just pulling some strings on the side and laughing. To me, we've seen this 100 times. It's not innovative, it's not creative, and it really undermines, in my opinion, a powerful villain who gets henchmen to do all of his work for him, but not in a clever way. We've seen things before where the villain's not in combat against the hero. For example, in The Dark Knight and things like that. That works really well because the villain's smart. The leader in this film, his motivation is he's pissed off that General Thunderbolt Ross, you know, used him, messed his head up, and didn't give him freedom. Fair enough, but honestly, at this point, that's a pretty 2D villain arc, in my opinion, when you've got writers on this film who are experienced and have been doing this for years and years now. We've seen experienced writers take on complex villains like Thanos, etc., and do them well. I'm not expecting a Thanos-level villain in this film. However, when the film's villain is out for a revenge plot and sits there in the third act of the film on the phone, breaking down like Darth Vader when he wakes up from his coma because his plan didn't go correctly, you know, in my opinion, that the villain is fucked. I mentioned before that there were a couple story beats that do link into the Marvel Universe. However, I do think they come at a cost of this script. We clearly see Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson at the start of the film talking about how he doesn't want to assemble the Avengers because there's a conflict between him and Thunderbolt Ross. Obviously, after Civil War, you got to remember the Falcon was on Tony Stark's team. Thunderbolt Ross caused a bunch of dramas between the two characters. Anyway, now all of a sudden, you know, he's at the end, he's now open to doing the Avengers initiative, obviously to set up the future Avengers because they needed a way to bring these teams together. Looks like Sam Wilson's going to be one of the founding fathers of the team. Fair enough. However, it completely conflicts with the story arc that we've followed with the Falcon throughout Civil War and at the beginning of the film. The guy clearly doesn't agree with the Avengers because of the control that Thunderbolt Ross had. That is the consistent story arc with the character. He's not the character to be creating the Avengers based on this. He's the character to jump in when he realizes it's the right thing to do to save the planet. Not the character to be organizing a team he fundamentally disagrees with. I don't know why the script went in this direction. It's a complete conflict of interest for the character. Adamantium is one of the big themes of the film as well. We obviously have Wolverine coming. It's fair enough they want to introduce the X-Men in. Fine. They did address the celestial being in the ocean. That's actually good. I'll give the movie props for this point. They could have easily just flown that to the side and forgot all about it. That's very good that they address this. I'm very happy with it. However, Thunderbolt Ross acts like an absolute ass throughout this movie, and while I think Harrison Ford is doing an alright job for what he's given with, I don't think Thunderbolt Ross is written correctly. I think he causes drama for no good reason, and I honestly think that he's a menace throughout the film. I understand why he had to be that way, because they have to create the conflict between America and the Japanese when they're going after the adamantium in the ocean, trying to steal it for each other. However, I think the way how it all played out compromised Thunderbolt Ross's character's writing and ultimately led him to not be a character that you want to root for as an audience, which, while that may have been the case, as he's definitely a misunderstood character in the script, there's some things that happen with his health and such, which, you know, you learn later, which you're trying to empathize with the character. However, I think you've seen him be a dick too much throughout the film to really get on his side. That's my personal opinion. So what did you think of Captain America Brave New World? Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. I don't generally like doing negative reviews, and as I said, this movie did turn out better than I thought it would be. However, ultimately, it is a disappointing film, which is going to leave a lot lacking for many audiences. Let me know what you thought, guys. Hit subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.